gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate here on Nile TV International. I'm your host for tonight, Nancy Sarah Barakat, and up for discussion we've got two hot topics for you. We're going to be starting off with Prime Minister Sharif Ismail, who delivered his government's first policy statement before the House of Representatives today after a minor cabinet reshuffle that saw 10 ministers replaced on March the 23rd. The programme comprised of 7 major axes, including achieving social justice, enhancing democracy, preserving national security, a financial future vision, the development of infrastructure, achieving administrative reform, and enhancing Egypt's role in the region. The Prime Minister also tackled the current situation and the challenges facing the country, calling on MPs to back the government in order to overcome those challenges. Now, under Article 146 of the 2014 Constitution, the policy statement must be debated by Parliament within 30 days, after which it will be up to the House whether or not to vote with or withhold confidence in the government. Later on in the hour, another hot topic for you, the 2-day conference of the Ministers of Defence of the Community of the Sahel-Saharan States, SENSAD, which took place in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh over the weekend. The 27 Sahel-Saharan countries agreed on Friday to form a terrorism combating unit with its headquarters in Egypt. This decision was among the 17 points that were announced in a conference declaration. During the conference, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi also announced that Egypt is offering 1,000 military training scholarships to African nations in order to enhance cooperation as part of Egypt's overall policy of improving relations with African nations. Now, joining me here in the studio for tonight's discussion, I have the honour of being joined by General Hussein Abdulrazak, strategic expert. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. And also a pleasure to have General Samir Raghib, strategic expert. Thank you very much, sir, for coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, before I take the first report for the evening, I'm being joined by Dr. Ibrahim Abdulaziz Higazi, Member of Parliament, to tell us more about his impressions of the Prime Minister's statement. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy, for inviting me for this intervention.
Always a pleasure. Again, let me just start off by asking you, sir, about your impressions of the Prime Minister's address today.
Well, first of all, I think we had a snapshot of the speech today of His Excellency last Thursday as member of Cairo District for the Parliament. But we had received the files, about 200 plus pages, and its full details. And let me give you just a briefing about my impression of His Excellency's speech today. First of all, the transparency, and he started his speech by being very transparent regarding the challenges that Egypt is facing, which is very, very dangerous and as well as very challenging. And it requires very strict and quick decisions to be made. They will be harsh on the Egyptian people, but again, no pain, no gain. That's my understanding, and also I do believe. He spoke about 7 axes. The 7 axes, one about the national security, the other one about democracy and reinforcing of democracy, and the third, which is the importance of every Egyptian, the view on the program, the economic program for the government to raise the GNP from 4 to 6% in the next 2 years. Then social equality and servicing people. And I was very glad that he said one of our main objectives is the public satisfaction, the moral satisfaction, or the personal satisfaction. Yeah. And then he talked about the infrastructure as the 5th axis. The 6th axis was about very important axis also on the government, which is legislative reform. Last but not least, it's the issue of the leadership among the Arabs and among the African continent and nations as well. Right. So I'm very glad to receive such a document that we have to study properly. It's full details and transparency, but my always concern is this is a very, very challenging program for the next 2 years. And so it requires a lot of KPIs, key performance indicators, which I have not seen yet except the targets and goals. Hopefully when we discuss this and we come back to the government, we come back with certain questions such as, do we need KPIs in all of these 7 axes so that we can, at the end of the 2 years, we can judge whether the current government has done the job required or not.
Right. Is the Parliament leaning towards giving the vote of confidence to this current government?
In a personal basis, I cannot really speak on behalf of my colleagues in the Parliament, but on a personal basis, I think we should, because we are running against time. We are requiring a lot of fast decisions to be made to save the nations. The challenges mentioned at the beginning is very dangerous for all Egyptians,
right.
As well as there will be a vacuum if we do not approve the current government. A vacuum in the sense that we will have as the Parliament to come up with a new form of government and recommend the Prime Minister and the government cabinet afterwards, which at the time being I don't think we are well unified enough to form a strong coalition that can recommend the good government at the time being.
Right.
But anyway, it's not about the persons who will be representing the government, it's not about the programs. We have a program, we have a very challenging good program, and I think that we have to support that program because we are very optimistic, and we have to be optimistic the next period.
Well, let me ask you how you believe the public will receive the Prime Minister's address.
That's a very good question, but the public is not really informed about the details of the plan. They might have a lot of questions, and they will have a lot of rejections in some of the articles here on the 7 axes.
Right.
So it's the role now of the mass media to circulate and communicate the different axes, discussions, details from members of the Parliament, members of the government, so that they can explain to the public what are the details. You know, if we do not explain the flagships of the 7 axes and details in the, it's a very detailed program, by the way. It's not just, headlines and PowerPoint presentation titles.
Right.
No, it is detailed with specific programs, with specific actions, and that's what we need. You know, when you measure not objectives, not goals, but you measure strategies and program of action. And this is there.
Right, and I thank you very much, Member of Parliament, Dr. Ibrahim Abdulaziz Higazi, for your time and for your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, a quick stop and a quick recap perhaps as well of what the Prime Minister had to say before Parliament today, especially from an economic perspective, and then we'll be back to discuss that. Stay with us.
Minister Sharif Ismail stated on Sunday that Egypt is suffering from a severe economic crisis and that all local institutions should work hard to overcome it. In a 205-page policy statement before the Parliament, Ismail said Egypt has faced harsh political and economic conditions since 2011 and that the time has come to overcome these conditions. The Premier also reminded MPs that Egypt has one of the highest rates of population growth. Ismail added that the unemployment rate increased from 9% in 2009-2010 to 13.3% in 2015-2016, with this problem most severe among young people ranging from 15 to 29 years old. The Premier attributed the slowdown to a severe decline in sovereign revenues coming from national sources like the Suez Canal and tourism. Ismail also explained that the rate of inflation has soared to 10 to 12%, negatively affecting the lives of poor and limited income citizens who spend most of their money on food. Meanwhile, Ismail said the budget deficit hit 11.5% of GDP in 2014-2015, while the interest on public debt surged to 26% of total public expenditure in 2014-2015. Ismail also indicated that foreign debt rose from 33.7 years to 2000.
For the technical glitches on that report, but allow me to start off with General Hussein Abdulrazak. Thank you once again for coming in, and let me ask you, as an Egyptian citizen, not as a strategic expert, how you saw the Prime Minister's address today.
Let me first say that the very long-awaited program, had been presented today to the Parliament, and this is a good step, as a matter of fact. But we should understand, the statement made by the Prime Minister in the Parliament showing that the challenges, that the government are facing, to plan and to conduct this program. I would say, it is better for all of us, the Parliament members and the people, to support the government in this critical period. And on the road, we can make amendment, we can make different ways, but we should adopt this program and not to take a long time, to negotiate and to dispute about the access or about the procedures in different access. So I think I'm really happy to have this program presented, and I would urge the Parliament and the people to support the government. And I think the message sent by President Al-Fattah al-Sisi today, just to say, this is the government, is going to work with me and to achieve this program.
Right.
So it is a message of confidence in this government, and he urged the Parliament to work together and to cooperate with the government in order to have this program achieved.
I want to ask you something, because prior to the March 23rd cabinet reshuffle, even though it was minor, there was some dissatisfaction from the public as to the government's performance. Do you think that this reshuffle will change the how can I put it, the effectiveness of the current government, and that we will see changes, major changes, and the government will be moving at a much faster pace?
I understood from the reshuffle that the ministers concerned about the monetary system, the economic system had been changed. And I think the governor of the central bank pointed out in his interview was Lamis Al-Hadidi, if you remember, that he really was happy, with the reshuffle concerning the economic group. So that does mean he knows them, he trusts them, and they are able to conduct the future period.
Right, General Samir, let me ask you the same question. How did you receive the statement by the Prime Minister today to Parliament?
First of all, I am agree with my colleague's opinion about this government must take or get the confidence.
Right.
Because the alternative is disaster. Upon Article 147, if the Parliament or the House of Representatives refused this government, then they has a candidate from majority, the party of majority. We haven't a party of majority in the House of Representatives. Then the President has the authority to referendum about dissolving the House of Representatives. Then we have a referendum which needs money, and after this a new parliamentary elections, which means a huge amount of money, and the challenge of security during the periods of election. In this time, like your guest in phone call said, we have a vacuum of power, a vacuum of authority. In a country has enough of crisis. Crisis that we not made it, but we find it accumulated from maybe decades ago, not from 5 or even after the revolution.
Right.
So this we stress that we must accept this government.
Right.
After accepting this government, we can oppose them, we can, the parliamentary observe and monitor their conduct. It's not the last stage to accept or refuse. So the roots and the component of the country will complete with the elected president and constitute and parliament and government.
Right.
About refusing the conduct of this government, from my point of view, not from their conduct in their office, but that they do not qualified enough for public speech.
Right.
Like Zend, Mr. Zend, not because of his conduct.
Right.
His lapsing.
Yes.
Which is a problem, because when you have a minister in a powerful, in charge of perhaps one of the strongest ministries, one would expect that either you have a spokesman who does the talking for you, but you should more or less rather avoid making your own statements as to avoid the slip of the tongue that happened in...
especially in the private media and channels.
Right.
Maybe in the
Do you think we're going to be seeing a change?
Media,
right.
Takes official procedures for treating with minister or official people. But in private media, not they seek for audience, not for the sake of the country.
Right.
Not most of them, but it is I think it is a rule.
Right.
Not the exceptions. Before then, the same matter with the private media. In addition to Mr. Sharif Ismail, not qualified enough for public speech.
Right.
So if we have a prime minister which qualified and has required charisma for public speech, then we have a balance. If someone make a mistake, then the prime minister will...
But isn't that more or less also to a large extent the job of a spokesperson?
Yes.
Where he conveys...
It can manage. It can manage this way. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Also, I want to stress that Mr. President focused several times in addressing that he has a trust with this government and they will elected for their position. So we trust our president.
Right.
And the majority of people trust of...
Right, okay. So how do you think the public, if I come back to you, General Hussein, how do you think the public is going to be receiving the address by the Prime Minister, long awaited, as you mentioned earlier?
I think this is the role of the media. The media has to explain to the public, all the details about the government program.
Right.
And the discussion about the axis or the procedure should be positive, not negative. No, not to dig the ground under his feet. Just to push him and to give him confidence. To conduct his policy. So the media has a major role. To inform the public and to gain the support from the public behind the government. We need this. We need this solidarity, in this particular time, in this critical time.
Right.
And I think the people will understand, the main 7 axis is very good, really. It's dealing with the major issues, we are facing, major challenges we are facing. And I'm sure, the people will understand the challenges and will accept this program. So I would say again, the media has a major role to play in this time, and also the member of the parliament, not to take a long time in arguing and
Debates.
expressing themselves at the expense of our national interest.
Right.
You know,
But the government also has a role, if you agree with me on this, and that is that it ups the pace. It's quicker in taking its decisions. It's quicker in showing people that tangible change is happening in their lives.
We will see. We will see. You know. So, and I would say that President Fattah Sisi, you know, asked the ministers, you know, to talk to the people, you know, to be close to the people, to solve the problem, to cooperate.
Right.
You know. So these directives, you know, should be taken into account from Prime Minister and the ministers, and they have to cooperate with the Parliament, you know, to pass the laws and to pass whatever needed, you know, to facilitate the accomplishment of this program.
If I come back to you, General Samir, and just to wrap this topic up, how important will transparency be in the upcoming period from your perspective?
I think that transparency enhanced. Yesterday and days before, Mr. Shir Ismail make a meeting with House of Representatives deputies to convince them about his program and his view for the next stage. I see this is the beginning of the real democracy, because in the new Egypt, the Second Republic, now the representative, the House of Representatives, which represents the people, has opinion and elect and select the government, and they have the right to accept or refuse. But regardless, we hope to accept, not for the sake of the government, for the sake of Egypt. I think this a long step in the route of democracy, because democracy is accumulative, not just between day and night. Now we have a House of Representatives, which is transparency elected. We have a government. The government, we ask each other, does they accept it or not? It's a good stage. Maybe during the last 6 decades, we haven't this mechanism for electing the government, and also the competition inside the House of Representatives. I think it's a good matter. Today some deputies ask why we are not in the summit that will discuss the problem. It's very good. Before we have a House of Representatives which ask for the sign of ministers, not for discuss the matter of his country, his nation.
So having a healthy debate is always a good thing.
I think the debate is healthy. Maybe most of us not qualified enough to have a comprehensive debate, but with time our conduct will enhance. Our conduct will enhance. When our conduct will enhances, I think the whole framework of the country will be better than before.
Indeed. Now for our second topic for the evening, and our second report for tonight, which sheds more light on the Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration, which was announced during the conference of the defense ministers of the Sahel-Saharan states. Let's take a look at that, and then we'll be back to discuss that topic.
Minister of Defense Sidqi Subhi presented the Sharm el-Sheikh Agreement at the conclusion of the 5th Community of Sahel-Saharan States, SENSAD. The agreement, which has an emphasis on exchanging military experience and knowledge to counter terrorism, included a joint statement from the participating delegations who asserted the need to end conflict and fight extremism in the region. Subhi said that member states have agreed on enhancing military security and intelligence strategies to combat terrorism and limit the activities of extremist extremist groups. In addition to security policies, the agreement stated that economic strategies in Sinsat states must be enhanced to limit enrollment in militant groups. According to the agreement, Egyptian military forces are permitted to participate in border protection with Libya and Sudan, as well as to share military intelligence concerning militant activities. Egypt is also allowed to communicate with countries combating extremist groups such as Boko Haram in Nigeria in order to limit and eventually halt their activities. The agreement also vowed to stop any interference in the internal affairs of member states and to halt activities of rebel groups. The final joint statement of the Sinsat countries entailed that a counter-terrorism center will be established with its permanent headquarters in Egypt. After Subhi finished reading the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, defense ministers of Tunisia, Guinea, Morocco and other countries spoke about the role of their countries in the fight against terrorism. They praised Egypt's initiative in organizing this conference and thanked President Fattah al-Sisi, who vowed to give 1,000 scholarships to military cadres from member states for training in Egypt. The sixth round of the Sinsat meeting is expected to be held in Ivory Coast, while another conference attended by leadership will be held in Morocco later this year. The conference, which convened in Egypt, came ahead of a summit of heads of member states of the Community of Sahel-Saharan States organization to be held in Morocco later this year.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. General Hussein, let me start off by asking you of your impressions of the two-day summit.
Let me say, this meeting had a stunning success because the preparation was good, was objective, and the agenda, had been planned for this meeting was very good and dealing with the major problem that the countries concerned, Sinsat, are facing. So I would say the outcome of this meeting was objective, was very good, and covering the major issues that we are facing practically, and had been established a mechanism, a real mechanism, to deal with these challenges. On the top of this 17 article came out of this meeting, the mechanism of dealing with terrorism.
Right.
I mean, fighting terrorism. The cooperation between the member states necessary, to handle the terrorism everywhere, and to control the crossing border, the illegal crossing border from the different objects, the terrorists and smuggling and illegal immigration and all these problems. So they established a mechanism to deal with it effectively. And in my opinion, the most important thing is that the participants realize that the challenge that they are facing is very serious, and threatening their security and stability and even the existence of some countries. So they also realize that they should be very serious in dealing with these issues firmly and decisively. I think this is one of the major points, I had out of this meeting, and the article was very good, very active, and let's see how this subject will come true.
Let me ask you that question. How do you think, or how quickly, how effectively will these 17 points come into action?
Of course, they are dealing with two main subjects. The first is fighting terrorism.
Right.
How? They established a mechanism. the security center that had been stated to be established in Egypt, because we have a lot of experience in this field. The gathering information and exchanging intelligent information about the illegal move of the terrorism cells, and also not to intervene or not to allow any member state to intervene in the inner affairs of any censored states. So we respect the inner affairs of each country, but we have to cooperate, to control the borders and not to allow the illegal crossing to the border, because this is one of the major problems in the dynamic of terrorism,
right,
in the area. And also we have to work together to dine the sources of supplies, monetary, arms trade, smuggling, and all these things, going with terrorist activities. We have to be active and to work jointly and to cooperate on the daily basis,
right,
because the expansion of the terrorists is horrible, particularly in West Africa, and West Egypt and Libya, for example.
Right. Well, I wanted to touch on that and perhaps ask you, General Samir, if you felt that the timing of this particular conference was perhaps most significant because of the chaos that some fear could loom inside Libya at any moment. The country's in a state of emergency at the moment. How do you think that the timing of this conference coincides, to what extent do you think it coincides with what's happening in Libya?
The conference coming at a crucial time.
Right.
Because the matter is not Libya. The matter is that from equatorial Africa to the coast of Mediterranean in the north, and from the Atlantic in the west till the Blue Nile in Sudan, it is the region of Sahel and Sahara. This region converted to incubated environment for terrorism.
Right.
Terrorism is between Al-Qaeda in Maghreb Islam, ISIS, Daesh, Boko Haram. These groups has a tight relation with the organized crimes or organized criminal groups, which increase the challenges. They make a trans-border groups, while any nation, every nation has its local plan for fighting terrorism. So this summit, in the beginning, it's prepared for the presidential conference in Morocco later this year. And this paper will accepted from the presidential level during Morocco conference for community of Sahel and Sahara states. I agree with my colleagues that the armed forces will organize this conference and will prepare from expertise before the ministerial level.
Right.
But we encounter a big problem that we have 8 coalition in this region. We have G5, we have Nouakchott track, we have Djibouti operation, we have Ban Sahara initiative from USA, we have Trans-Sahara partnership against terrorism from USA. We have intervention from France in Mali, in Chad. The intervention from the global power for the sake of their convenience, not for the sake of the people.
Right.
In addition, that the non-state actors has the capability exceed the capability of a nation. So they seek to overcome sovereign states and replace sovereign states with militia and with chaos. Till now, we have papers, treaties, but without implementation.
Right, so how important is that what we see written and that all these declarations are actually implemented, and how do you think that African states will be eager now that they realize, as General Hussein said, that they are at real risk of terrorism continuing?
Yes, because if you look at the map, any fragile state distribute terrorism, crimes for their neighbors.
Right.
Now, Egypt, from the west, we have Libya, we have ISIS. In the north, south, we have Chad. In the south, we have Sudan. In the east, we have Gaza and Israel and the Arab Peninsula.
Right.
So we must cooperate, and we must believe that we are the first content that responsible for what happened in the border. Not like we invite NATO, invite France, invite Russia, because no one come for the sake or for the will for another nation.
Right.
Also, we need to share knowledge, share intelligence information, reaching for a coalition of military forces that are capable to restore sovereign states, restore nation states, and then when we reach for this, we have a mechanism for settlement, conflict prevention, and viable options for security and peace.
Right.
So in this summit, they establish the draft for the protocol for the security and peace permanent council. This, I think, Egypt now is a member of Security Council.
Right.
Also a member of Peace and Security of African Union. So may utilize this position of Egypt to raise the common interest for the members.
And I think to a great extent.
Also, some ask why we have African Union. Why we have another coalition contains 27 countries? Because South Africa has a different interest than Sahara and Sahel region.
Right.
If you ask South Africa or Zimbabwe about Libya, not care about this, but what happened in Algeria has direct influence in Mali, in Niger, in Mauritania, also as well as Libya. We suffer from arms smuggling across the border, the western border from Libya.
Right, I'm just going to have to stop you there and take our final report for the evening, and a closer look perhaps at President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's decision to provide 1,000 military scholarships to African nations. Let's take a look at that.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said during a conference of defense ministers from the community of Sahel-Saharan states that Egypt is to offer 1,000 military training scholarships to African nations. President el-Sisi made the announcement during a meeting with senior delegates to the conference, which opened in Sharm el-Sheikh. According to a defense ministry statement, the president said that Egypt's defense ministry will provide 1,000 scholarships to African countries, allowing them to study at Egyptian military colleges and institutes. He added added that the offer is aimed at enhancing cooperation with countries of the Sahel-Saharan community as part of Egypt's overall policy of improving relations with African nations. President el-Sisi also emphasized the special importance of the conference in light of security threats in the region and world, including recent attacks in Europe, expressing condolences to the families of those killed and injured in Tuesday's attacks in Brussels. El-Sisi stated that the attacks confirmed the importance of concerted efforts by the international community to eradicate all terrorist organizations and prevent the dissemination of extremist ideas. The president also stressed the need for political solutions to conflicts on the African continent in order to achieve development. For his part, Ibrahim Sani Abani, Secretary General of the Community of Sahel-Saharan States, praised the attendance of Minister of Defense at Subhi at the conference, saying the Egyptian minister's presence is very important. Speaking on the sidelines of the event, Abani said that the conference was being held in Sharm el-Sheikh due to ongoing security issues in Libya, pointing out that the meeting aimed at reactivating cooperation between the community states. He said the conference could help meet such challenges as human trafficking and the emergence of various terrorist groups such as Daesh and Boko Haram, which cross national boundaries and therefore require collaboration between different nations. Abani said the UN Charter allows states to defend their borders and to form regional organizations for the same purpose, pointing out that African countries should take the initiative to defend themselves against terrorism rather than relying too much on the UN Security Council. Abani stressed the need for African nations to coordinate efforts in order to deal with security matters.
And very quickly, General Hussein, let me ask you obviously what you thought of this particular move by the President, and to what extent do you think this initiative will help boost relations between Africa and Egypt?
I would like to say this is not new, in Egypt, because we are in our military school and security institution. We have many African countries member in our military school and institution. When I was even a general officer, my colleagues from Kenya, from Nigeria, from different African countries. So this scholarship is just, to strengthen the ties between Egypt and the CENSAR members. This is a very, very good step, and we are going to establish this important center which would be responsible for training and providing experiences, to the officers and commanders and personnel from the CENSAR, which will increase their efficiency, to handle the challenges they are facing. And I think this sort of cooperation is very good to enhance the ties between the member state and to make the cooperation looks very active and very practical. Right. Not just a statement or some words to be given in some occasion, but practical procedure to be taken to strengthen the ties between the African country and to enhance the security measures taken practically,
Right.
in all the member states.
Right, and just finally, I'll ask you very quickly, because I've only got 2 minutes left, your impressions as well of the scholarship plan. To what extent do you think it's going to enhance Egyptian-African ties, General Sayed?
I agree with my colleagues. This is considered one of the most important soft power that related to hard power.
Right.
Finally, African constituency is the most important constituency of the national security of Egypt. So we must do or devote the required effort the matter is not easy to collect 27 countries, and also we must consider that in this region they are a leader vacuum after toppling Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Also Algeria not a member of this community. Also Ethiopia is not a member. So if we look at the 27 countries, I think without any competition, Egypt must ask for transfer the headquarters of the community for Cairo, because now the headquarters in Tripoli, which is not convenient to be a headquarters for this coalition, the geopolitical and geographical position of Egypt allow it to ask for this. Also, the period time for the meeting is 4 years. It's not convenient for terrorists who during these 4 years change the map of the terrorism.
Right, so to meet more often and to follow up.
More rapid step.
Definitely.
Not a meeting every 4 years.
Definitely. I thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. It was a pleasure having you with us. General Samir Raghib, strategic expert, and also General Hussein Abdurrez, strategic expert. Thank you very much both for coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for tonight's edition of the Daily Debate. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, it's goodbye. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time.